Hi everybody, this is Jamie with Everything Airplanes. Welcome to my channel. On today's episode, I'll be taking you through part 2 of the Fantasy of Flight Museum review. As a part of the review, you'll be seeing aircraft such as the Beechcraft Stagger Wing, the Waco F5, and the Gby series of racers from the 1920s and 1930s Cleveland Air Races and Thompson Trophy Race. I will also be showing you some of the rare engines that they had, some of which are the only remaining example of the type on the planet. After looking at the content that I had from this museum, I will also be doing a part 3, which will include the World War II aircraft on display, as well as some World War II artifacts from the museum. I hope you enjoy this content, and I'll talk to you at the end of the video. Thanks. Pictured here is an Anzani 3-cylinder fan engine. From 1905 to 1915, Alessandro Anzani built a number of 3-cylinder fan engines and radial engines. The 3-cylinder fans were known as W or W3 engines. The appeal of the fan configuration was that because all the cylinders were above the horizontal, there was little danger of the plugs being fouled by the lubricating oil. The disadvantage, particularly for an aircraft engine, was the extra weight required to counterbalance the pistons. One of these engines was used to power Louis Blériot's 1909 English Channel crossing flight. An Anzani 3-cylinder engine that powers a Blériot 11 based in England is thought to be the oldest airworthy engine in the world. This is the Curtiss C6 Aviation engine. The Curtiss C6 Aviation engine was designed by Charles Kirkham in his Savona, New York machine shop while he worked for the Curtiss Aeroplane Company. Produced in 1918, both the C6 and the K6 were in effect one half of another design, the K-12. Having worked with Glenn Curtiss since early in the century, Kirkham finally left Curtiss shortly after the C6 design in a disagreement over necessary redesign of their joint effort, the K-12. The notable difference between the C6 and the K6 engines was the electric starter mount case in the engine block of the C6. Although it was a fairly reliable direct drive engine delivering 160 horsepower, it was not needed in the post-World War I rearmament program. Curtiss was not interested in using the C6 to compete with the prolific Wright Hispano engine because he was focused on the development of the K-12. The few C6s built were mostly derated to 1700 RPM, giving 150 horsepower. The C6 was one of the engines used commercially in the Curtiss Oriole, the Curtiss Eagle, and the Curtiss Seagull. The engine shown here is the Argus AS3, a 6-cylinder inline water-cooled aircraft engine produced in Germany by Argus Motoren. Argus Motoren already supplied a limited number of 150 and 200 horsepower aircraft engines to the Imperial German Navy in the summer of 1914. As these engines did not prove successful, Argus decided to concentrate its development efforts on an improved 180 horsepower 6-cylinder type, which became accepted into service in January of 1916 as the Argus AS3. First operational experience with the engine, however, proved troublesome, with overheating problems occurring among other things. These problems were only solved after several improvements of the engine, and so it took until the end of 1917 for the engine to attain its full operational maturity. Shown here is the 1931 Gby-Z. The Great Depression was tough on the aircraft industry, especially the small sport planes the Granville brothers built in Springfield, Massachusetts. The decision was made to build a racer for the Cleveland Air Races in hopes that the prize money could help support their dwindling sales. Bob Hall started engineering the first racer in July of 1931. It was named the Gby after its builders, the Granville brothers. In less than 6 weeks, the city of Springfield made its first flight at a cost of less than $5,000. The Gby would be flown by expert pilot Lowell Bayless and won every race it entered, including the Shell Speed Dash at 267.34 miles per hour and the famous Thompson Trophy Pylon Race. They more than recouped their original investment. The remarkable Gbys have withstood decades of controversy due to the number of high-profile crashes in the 1930s, including one that ended Bayliss' life. However, these spectacular airplanes also came to represent the highest achievement of American spirit during the darkest days of the Great Depression. This Gby Sportster R2 was built and flown by Delmar Benjamin and is a replica of the famed 1932 Granville Brothers Gby Racer. It has been seen all across North America and Europe, flying a hair-raising routine to the delight of aviation-minded audiences. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R985 engine, the Gby Sportster R2 is identical to the original, which was built specifically to compete in the popular air races of 1932. The R2 competed in the cross-country Bendix race, a similar but slightly larger design with a Pratt & Whitney R1340 engine was dubbed the R1, which competed in the Thompson Trophy races, a pylon event. Of the two, the R2 is the sleeker with a more tapered engine cowl. The larger power plant in the R1 would not allow. Together, they were the fastest land planes of the day. Gbys competed in all the popular air races of the Golden Age. These highly engineered, tear-shaped superplanes required a skillful hand and perfect circumstances, but with the right pilot, they ruled the sky. Unfortunately, no original Gbys airplanes survived the rough and tumble racing years, but their unique appearance and pedigree have sustained their popularity. The Gbys at Fantasy of Flight are among the few replicas that actually fly. A key to the success of the Beech Aircraft Corporation was the Beech Model 17, commonly known as the Stagger Wing. The backward stagger of the biplane wings was designed to offer the pilot a good field of view to help structural integrity, and wind tunnel tests had demonstrated that this particular layout offered a good combination of speed and stability. The basic structure is largely of welded steel tube and fabric covering. The enclosed cockpit accommodates the pilot and 3 or 4 passengers. The Beech was gradually improved to become a marketable commodity as opposed to an aircraft which required advanced skill to fly. The Stagger Wing was first flown in 1932, and the last Beech Stagger Wing was completed in 1949. The military became interested in the Stagger Wing as a light personal transport during World War II. The American Army Air Forces had adopted it as the UC-43, the Navy as the Gby-1 and Gby-2, and the British as the Gby-2 Traveler. The aircraft is powered by one 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R985 Wasp Junior radial piston engine with a max speed of 212 miles per hour and a cruise speed of 185 miles per hour. The aircraft shown here is the 1932 Howard Dga-5 named Ike. As a young man, Benjamin Odell Howard was never one to seek conventional education, so with a how-to-fly book and a second-hand biplane, he experienced his first flight, quickly followed by his first crash. Undaunted, he accepted a high-paying job to work from the ground up at the Curtiss factory, where he learned hands-on about aircraft design and building. By the age of 20, he designed and built his first aircraft. What followed was a wildly colorful Golden Age career, modifying aircraft for bootleggers and chasing racing prizes during the romantic 20s and 30s. Each aircraft Benny built was identified with his own official trademark, DGA, which stands for Damn Good Airplane. In partnership with Gordon Israel, Benny created 2 of the smallest and quickest aircraft in the 1932 races, low-winged, wire-braced monoplanes known as Mike and Ike, who took turns being the fastest. After Benny and Gordon added a 3rd aircraft, Mr. Mulligan, to the stable, prize money and acclaim poured in, culminating in 1935 when Howard Aircraft won the Bendix Thompson, and Gby trophies, a season of race events that became unofficially known as the Benny Howard National Air Races. Benny claimed he preferred building race planes because they paid for themselves, but his legacy was bigger than trophies. Howard's aircraft were among the safest in the Hellbent for Leather races, never killing a pilot. And while many of the original classic racers, including all the Gbys, are long gone, Howard's original Ike and Mike are still preserved. This is the 1934 Brown B-2 named Miss Los Angeles. Following an adventurous early career as a bomber pilot of the Constitutionalists against Pancho Villa in Mexico, Lawrence W. Brown returned to the States and set about making a name for himself as a designer of some of the finest, fiercest competitive aircraft in the legendary Golden Age air races, truly the NASCAR of its day. In some instances, several of his designs would compete against one another in a single race. His trademark is clearly evident on the B-2. Absolutely minimal frontal area with a great deal of attention to streamlining. One of the interesting aspects of this design is that it incorporates flaps which lowered the landing speed to 50 or 60 miles an hour. Miss Los Angeles made her sensational premiere at the 1934 National Air Races fully decked out in her distinctive gleaming scarlet paint with lettering and accents in gold leaf. Entered in the inaugural three-race Gby Trophy competition and flown by Roy Minor, formerly a stunt pilot in Hell's Angels, she took first place in speed with 213.257 miles per hour. Shortly thereafter, Miss Los Angeles turned up at the Thompson Trophy race as the only new competitor and flew smartly for a second-place trophy. This replica was built by Bill Turner, renowned replicator of Golden Age racers. This small, low-winged monoplane is one of the very few remaining original Golden Age racers. While most of them were destroyed in the pursuit of trophies or gradually cannibalized as the years passed, the Brown B-1 survived. Like the Brown B-2, the aircraft employed a Monasco engine, which was popular with the air racers since it had just about as little frontal area as possible, with high horsepower output and a relatively low weight. Designed by Dan Holloway for Brown, the B-1 was built during 1933-1934 for Ralph Bushy, who wanted a hot ship for Cleveland and numerous other air races being held across the country during the 1930s. Initial test flights proved quite promising, and Bushy took the plane to the Pan American races in New Orleans, where he placed a very respectable second in the aircraft's first outing. He also won the 1934 Miami All-American races. The future appeared very promising for the bright yellow racer, but the plane was badly damaged in a landing accident. In fact, this accident is probably responsible for the aircraft's survival, as it prompted the aircraft to be put into storage for more than 10 years, staying under wraps during the period when most of the other racers were scrapped. The B-1 reemerged from storage in 1947, was rebuilt, and began a second career as a racer. And then back into storage it went until the 1990s when it reemerged, again to start a third career, following full restoration this time as one of the few surviving airplane ambassadors to a legendary era of aviation innovation, the golden age of air racers. This is the 1931 Laird Super Solution. The Super Solution was an evolution of what Marty Laird had learned from competing in the 1930 National Air Races with his racer, the Laird Solution. In just 6 weeks, it was designed and built for the 1931 Thompson closed-circuit pylon races at Cleveland. The race consisted of 10 laps around a 10-mile course and drew 60,000 spectators. It was also flown in the new cross-country Bendix race from Los Angeles to Cleveland. 34-year-old Jimmy Doolittle was chosen as the pilot because of his successful background in racing and blind flying. 8 aircraft entered the Bendix race, and Jimmy won by a commanding lead with quick stops in Albuquerque and Kansas City. After landing in Cleveland, Jimmy quickly fueled up and continued on to Newark, New Jersey to set a new transcontinental record. His total trip time for the entire 2,450-mile coast-to-coast flight was 11 hours and 16 minutes, averaging 217 miles per hour and beating the old record by over an hour. This is the 1931 Gby Sportster. The Gby was slightly larger than earlier Gby racers and was distinctive for having two seats, and the front windshield could be removed with the cockpit faired over for racing. Like other Sportsters, it was a wire-braced, low-wing monoplane of conventional construction with open cockpits and fixed undercarriage. Only two Y models were built by the Granville brothers, who originally intended them to be used as company planes and support aircraft for their R Series racers. However, when the first one fell into the hands of speedster Maud Tate, daughter of one of the Granvilles' earliest investors, it became a racer in its own right, winning the Cleveland Pneumatic Aero Trophy race for her. The Gby was also a favorite of another fearless female pilot, Florence Klingensmith, who flew it with a Wright Whirlwind engine of double the original horsepower to second place in the women's free-for-all at the 1933 Chicago International Races. Once this aircraft entered the race circuit, it rarely finished outside the money. A noted Gby author claims the Model Ys won more races and made more money than the better-known purpose-built Gby racers. Neither of the two original aircraft exists today. The Waco F Series is a series of American-built general aviation and military biplane trainers of the 1930s from the Waco Aircraft Company. The Waco F Series of biplanes supplanted and then replaced the earlier O Series of 1927 to 1933. The F Series had an airframe which was smaller and about 450 pounds lighter than the O Series, while continuing to provide accommodation for 3 persons in tandem open cockpits. The F Series was popular with private owner pilots for sporting and other uses and continued in production through the late 1930s. The tandem cockpit UPF-7 was adopted by the Civil Pilot Training Program and continued in production until 1942, by which time over 600 had been built. The 1934 model YMF was substantially redesigned with a longer and wider fuselage, larger rudder, and other structural changes, and put into production in March 1986 by the Waco Classic Aircraft Company of Lansing, Michigan as the YMF-5. Considerable numbers of F-Series biplanes, both original and newly built, remain in service today. Hi everybody, this is Jamie again with Everything Airplanes. I hope you enjoyed the video. Everything Airplanes is headed to Topeka, Kansas this weekend for the Thunder Over the Heartland Air Show. They're supposed to have 100 airplanes on static display, military, warbirds, and others, and I'm looking forward to covering that. The air show is going to be pretty intense. They've got a lot of military aircraft flying out there. They do have what they call the Tora reenactment. It's a reenactment of the Pearl Harbor attack. I'm also going to Oshkosh next month, and just before Oshkosh, I hope to get to Fagan Fighters Museum up in Granite Falls, Minnesota. I also plan to attend the Wings of the North Air Expo just outside of Minneapolis on the 24th or 25th of July, whatever that weekend is. And towards the end of summer, I will be covering the grassroots flying in Broadhead, Wisconsin. Hope to get back to Chino to cover the air show at Chino and attend a few of the air museums out in Southern California. So lots of good opportunities for me to bring content to you before the end of the year. So again, I thank you for your support. I look forward to bringing part 3 to you as soon as possible. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. This is Jamie signing off. Take care. Bye.